Glory to Jesus Christ. Glory forever. Hey, hope everybody's well. This is Father Anthony Perkins, and welcome to My Fool Head, where a retired intelligence analyst, a seminary professor, priest, and politologist get together and talk about whatever comes into my head. And today, I do have a topic that I wanted to talk about, and that's the harmony of God. Talk about the salvific beauty of liturgy and music, right? So maybe more directed stream of consciousness than usual. I hope you're well. In my world, it's Saturday, December 4th, 8 o'clock in the morning. And I am, today I have 2 papers to write. One of them is a literature review about politics and religion in the United States, and specifically I'm lamenting the lack of attention to mechanisms. And then the other one is a review of some literature on special education. So that's what I have waiting for me. It'll be fun. It's all good. And happy feast day. If I would, where I would rather be, would be at the altar right now and celebrating the entrance of the Theotokos into the temple. But that'd be 2.5 hours to the altar and serving, and 2.5 hours back, and that would result in my failing at least one class, if not 2. So God forgives. It's such a beautiful feast. So there's a lot to talk about in the world. We don't know what Omicron is going to be like. It's interesting as an observer to see how different people are reacting to both the Omicron and the news about the Omicron, and throw in another thing, right? All this is in a giant set of feedback loops. The reaction to the policies that the Omicron virus is generating. And then you've got feedback, so response to the media, response to the policies, and it all just kind of turns into this thing that's, for people who are like I am, really interesting to watch. Other things going on as well in the Orthodox world. No, we're not going to talk about that. So maybe in a future show. But today I really do want to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, which is music. And we've talked about different ways that theology gets done. And hey, I'm a fan for patristic literature. I'm certainly a fan for scripture, for lectures and all that kind of stuff. But the way that the 2 ways that I experience theology the most are in relationship with people that I share love with, right? Where it's 2 ways. That's how I feel it the strongest. And then the other thing is music, which for me it's almost the same thing. And we'll talk about why that is in a few minutes, Lord willing. But music, just incredible. And there are ways to make music boring, right? We can talk about to what extent music is just a matter of taste, to what extent that it's more than that, where some music is absolutely bad or absolutely good. And this is not a new discussion. Right? If you read Plato, you know that this was, an ongoing discussion in civilization from very early on, whether some music cultivated virtue and other kinds cultivated vice. Well, we know that certainly some music can cultivate virtue. And that's what liturgy is. But there's more to it, right? Why is it that music works the way it does? That's what I want to talk about. And there are other people who talk about it better. So Jonathan Pajou, he has an interview, I should have looked up the name, with a musician who lives in France, who's from Canada, and who has a Russian name. But if you go to Jonathan Pajou's website, you can listen to that. It's very good. Another one is Begbie. Begbie has a book on music, theology, and time. That's good. I'm going to come at it from a different direction than they do. And I want to start with, let's see here, maybe 4 quotes. And the first one is one of everyone's favorites. It gets read on Pascha, the Pascha Divine Liturgy. And it's read in many places in a way that it isn't read, the gospel isn't read at any other time during the year. So you'll have pauses and bells rung. You'll have it done line by line, and each verse is read in additional languages. So there are different ways, different traditions, okay? But the fact that it's planted right there at the Divine Liturgy of Pascha, shows you the preeminent importance of this. So it's I'm going to share with you the first 5 verses of the first chapter of the Gospel according to St. John. And I encourage you to listen to, what's that podcast by Father Stephen and Father Andrew? Lord of Spirits. Their most recent one in my world. No, not the most recent one. The one on the Word of the Lord is amazing, because Father Stephen goes through this verse by verse, and you've probably done that before. And, I can't tell you how many times I've done that, but he's able to bring out some insights that you knew it all along, but you didn't really realize it until he spells it out about what the light signified. And it's fantastic. But here you go. I'm focusing on, I'm trying to use these quotations to help us frame a discussion of music. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Okay. And what I'm doing, don't worry if you're a little worried, he's talking about music. Is he going to say that the Word is like, the Bible or something? No, this is the Logos. It's the pattern. This is the patterning of creation. So the next one is a commentary on this from C.S. Lewis. In the darkness, something was happening at last. A voice had begun to sing. It seemed to come from all directions at once. Its lower notes were deep enough to be the voice of the earth herself. There were no words. There was hardly even a tune. But it was beyond comparison the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. It was so beautiful Diggory could hardly believe it. And some of you may know what that is from. If you don't, I'll tell you. It's from The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis, right? And this is where some people from our earth managed to stumble into the creation of a new world, and they get to see Aslan, who is the Christ allegory figure, creating. And this is how C.S. Lewis is helping us to understand the patterning, right? And so music, voice, logos, they're all intertwined. All right, and then here is another commentary by a friend of C.S. Lewis. Okay? And this is from J.R.R. Tolkien from the Silmarillion. And it came to pass that Iluvatar called together all the Ainur and declared to them a mighty theme, unfolding to them things greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed, and the glory of its beginning and the splendor of its end amazed the Ainur, so that they bowed before Iluvatar and were silent. Then Iluvatar said to them, "Of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if he will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song." And then skip a bit. But when they were come into the void, Iluvatar said to them, "Behold your music." And he showed to them a vision, giving to them sight where before was only hearing. And they saw a new world made visible before them, and it was globed amid the void, and it was sustained therein, but was not of it. And as they looked and wondered, this world began to unfold its history, and it seemed to them that it lived and grew. Okay, so that's a commentary on Genesis 1. It's a commentary on that prologue, the first part of the Gospel of St. John. And then here is a Russian writer's commentary on it. This is Fyodor Dostoevsky from The Idiot. Beauty will save the world. So one of the things that we know completely is that as Orthodox Christians, is that the world is sacramental and that life is meant to be liturgical. Right? So it's a long-standing understanding of Genesis 1 is that it is liturgical. And the Lord is giving us a framework, a liturgical framework for understanding the purpose and the order of creation. Okay? Just like he gave us the divine liturgy to help us frame our own lives and participated in it better. Right? Psalm 33:5 says that the Lord spoke and the world was created. Okay? So all of these commentaries on creation are meant to encourage us in our calling to be the royal priesthood, to see the world as it is, not as separate objects, right, that can be measured and studied, that they can be analyzed and things held constant and things varied. You know, we can pick something apart and look at it from all sides, but rather that we can see its, maybe a Greek word, it's telos, what's going on here. He made us the royal priesthood, and Father Harry is doing a great job leading us through this in our new podcast, Made to be a Kingdom with Ancient Faith Radio. Yeah, there's a little plug there. Yeah, we're the royal priesthood, living a liturgy. That's what we're meant to do. And it's on us if instead we say, this is not about liturgy. Liturgy is not how we love. Liturgy is not how we love God. It's not how we love neighbor. It doesn't describe that kind of relationship and that kind of pastoring, that kind of service. Instead, it's about these other things. Right? When you understand that is the actual pattern, That is God's desire. That is the music, so to speak, that allows you to enter into it, and you can then measure the worth and the utility of things based on how they fit in with that telos, how they fit in with that pattern. And even saying that, there are some of us that are more rigorous, more hedgehog-like, and some of us that are more fox-like, right? And in Tolkien's commentary on that, he's even able to bring Melkor's dissonance into the music, right? That's very Orthodox, right? That all things work to the glory of God, right? All right, and that's very fox-like, if you will. Okay, but if you've listened to me at all, you know that we need all of these attempts, these discernments, to together figure out what is worth liturgizing, what is part of the great liturgy, and what shouldn't be part, what is a corruption. And when you see this pattern, and you see how our behavior, if you will, in church, and here I don't mean whether you stand up tall or anything like that. That's part of it, but it's a small part. Our behavior, our actions, our attitudes, our reverence, our awe, our supplication, our humility, our love, all of these things, that is fed by and feeds the liturgy, right? Then, and that is the structure that we are to take into all of the world to make the crooked way straight. Everything changes, right? Us being called the real royal priesthood takes on added significance, right? There are some things that are fitting, and there are some things that are not. If you see me and I'm wearing a cassock, and I am bellied up to a bar, with empties all around me, you're like, that is nidistoin, that is not fitting. Well, why? Why? Is it because I've broken some moral codes? No, it's because that this behavior is not liturgical. It doesn't match. If you see me and I am acting in anger towards a parishioner, I've lost my mind, as it were. Then you can say that is not fitting. Well, why? Is it because, feelings are hurt or what? Well, you can figure out the indicators, but the overall fact is because that is not liturgical. That is not how we relate to each other. Okay? The Lord made us the royal priesthood of this creation. Okay? And the liturgy defines how we relate to it, how we do our work. Everything becomes liturgy. That's the point about seeing the creation story in those terms, right? That is one of the capital T truths about how the scripture describes creation, because it describes its telos and puts us and our role in it, and describes it so clearly. So the liturgy defines, it sustains, and because it is a realization of the incarnation of Christ, it perfects the world and us. Again, it is the way that we bring the order to the chaos, that we make those crooked ways straight, right? That we subdue as we are commanded by God. Right? It doesn't mean to our will. It means pattern things according to the harmony of God. Okay? Now, at the same time, and we have to keep on doing liturgy. Why? Well, because there are creatures of chaos, like cats, right? That are just tearing stuff up. There are other forces that try to redefine and tear down the world and tear down us, right? To try and make us more crooked, more chaotic, less stable. And it's easy to fall into that kind of anti-pattern as well. The pattern of tearing down, of redefining according to the world. Because the world has its own kind of dynamic, right? Yeah. So we constantly have to be at work with this, right? It's like, do you make your bed every day? Jordan Peterson says, clean your room, right? Do you make your bed every day? Why, right? Every kid who's got something going asks that question. Why am I'm just going to make it up. I'm just going to tear it up again. Yeah, right. You are, but this allows you to get used to this liturgy. It gives you the muscle memory you need to be royal priesthood, right? To continually work. Not because you're trying to solve a problem, right? Check that box. Okay, done. No, because we're part of this process. And so yes, making your bed becomes a liturgical act. Especially if you're making your bed, like I'm married, and we will usually make the bed together. And we have, all these subtle communications and things, and it's a lot of fun. Even though, we're just going to tear it up. There are forces that are going to destroy the order of those sheets and that comforter, that quilt, right? But that's okay. We're going to keep at it. We're going to keep at it. All right, music is a huge part of this. It is both a wonderful metaphor for it. I think it's metaphor, symbol for it, but also as a capital S symbol, it's also our participation in it. Today, I'm drinking out of my Georgia Bulldogs mug because today we're having the SEC champions, and the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs are playing Alabama. Go Dogs, sick 'em. Woof, 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 woof. So music is a huge part of this process. So if we look at how music works, what it does for us, because remember, one of the things that liturgy is doing, that the pattern is doing, the logos is doing, is reordering ourselves so that we can become more perfect versions of ourselves, that we can become holy as God is holy. And how it helps harmony work. Okay? So if we look at how music works, we can get a better feel for how all these things go together. So let's start with looking at what music does for our own psychology, if you will. Okay, look at how music perfects us. When you are a musician, there are certain things that you need to be able to do. You need to be proficient at pushing buttons. I was low brass, so I had to know how to push the buttons. I had to know how to slide the slide. I know how to, make my embouchure do the things it was supposed to do, and breath support and all that. But one of the most important skills of a musician is listening. Learning to listen, right? Having the humility to hear what is going on around us, and to value what is going on around us. But this listening, I don't think this comes naturally to us all the time. It certainly doesn't in our social relations. We listen so that we can learn how to argue better, right? We listen so that we can then make our point, rather than listening in order to harmonize, in order to understand, in order to pastor, to build up. Because if I listen well, when I then add my voice, it's not going to drown out the other. It's going to match them in a way that makes more of them and of me. Okay? So we listen. And then listening allows us to match the pitch, whatever it is. In Orthodoxy, everything that we do is a cappella. And I think this is beautiful. And there are theological reasons why, yes, human voice, yes, I get all that. But let me tell you another thing that it does. And this is theology as well, as much as it is practice. I have to listen to you. And I have to match what you're doing. Okay. No, that's not always true, right? This is a thing that choir directors have to figure out, and they have different opinions on this, about whether if the deacon goes flat, does the choir go flat? If the choir goes flat, should the deacon go flat, right? Or do you stay on your note because it's the right note, even though as they go flat, it increases the dissonance, right? Well, you're not even going to know there's dissonance unless you're listening. In fact, you might even celebrate the dissonance because you're projecting yourself over it. But a good musician will be able to make that decision intentionally. And I, as a priest, I need to listen so that I can match the pitch of the choir. And they need to listen so that they can match the pitch that I give them, right? And sometimes, you'll see this between priest and choirs. You'll see that they can occasionally sound good, but there's some kind of power thing going on. And this shows up in the way they liturgize. And that power thing, that's not Genesis 1. That's later. That's not the prologue to John. Okay, that's Melchior, right? If we are asserting ourselves and our power, and if any priests listen to this, they may say, well, yeah, but you need that, right? You occasionally need that. Well, maybe on occasion you do, right? But oftentimes, when you see that, what you see is that the choir director and the priest don't have a good relationship, period, right? They aren't communicating well. So it's not just during the liturgy that they aren't listening to each other and respecting each other and trying to bring out the best in each other. They're like this. So, so being able to listen, being able to match, allows us to harmonize. So I can, in the tradition I'm part of, we often sing in thirds and fifths, right? We make chords. That's only possible, right? That if I am hearing, if I am matching, right? And then I understand how relationship is done. And we have shortcuts for how relationship is done in music because we have written notes quite often, right? So we have these patterns are written down for us. And the person who put those patterns to paper understood harmony. And so, put the soprano up on the third, put the bass on the tonic, put the tenor on the fifth, and so on. And then we, as musicians, we see that. And I would say that, that's what patristics, that's what a relationship counselor, that's what a good spiritual father will help us do as well, because they understand how the harmony works better than they do, and they put it on paper, as it were. Okay. And it helps if everybody's operating according to that, they're on the same sheet of music. Yeah. And St. Paul gets at this in relationships when he says, don't be unequally yoked, right? Make sure that everyone understands how harmony works. And this goes back to the role of listening. If you're a tenor and you're on the fifth, your part is not as relatively important as the bass part. In fact, if you're any other voice than bass, your part isn't as important. It's just a given, right? If you're listening, I'm smiling, right? Because I'm a bass. Another thing that has to go on in order for music to work, and I've touched on this before, is humility, right? There is a submission that happens. There's a submission to the tempo of the liturgy as it is being done in that moment. There's a submission to the key, right? So what pitch is our tonic, and what is the structure of harmony from that tonic, right? And the way I experience that, and I understand it, is key signatures and things like that, right? But I submit myself to that. I don't say, oh, well, this would actually be better if it were done in, A instead of F, right? I don't do that, right? There's some kind of way that decision is made. There's an order to that I participate in. And, I'm familiar with some modern, attempts to play with this where everyone kind of picks out their own thing. But that's really just a commentary on how necessary this submission is, right? So there's a submission to that. And if you are in a choir that has a director, you submit yourself to the direction of that director. Even if you are think you're a better musician, or you understand the needs of the moment better than they do, it doesn't matter. The need of the moment is for you to perform your part, according to the need of the liturgy as defined by that director. And that's a hard thing for many people to do. But to the extent that pride is the main thing that keeps us from being effective parts of the royal priesthood, effective liturgists in relationship and in service, you can see how it's necessary. Yeah. So you've got this submission, but you've also get expressiveness. So there's a mix that's going on, right? And people vary. Again, we've got hedgehogs and foxes, right? We've got people who are comfortable with more expression being brought into it, maybe personal expression, and with less. When I was becoming Orthodox, the culture of that parish was at the kleros was that you wouldn't use vibrato, right? And vibrato is where you kind of vibrate just a little bit. And you'll hear that most musicians, I think, do that. Certainly all the choirs I had been a part of before then, not big vibrato, but just regular vibrato was part of it. So I had to learn that discipline, right? It doesn't mean I agreed with it. It doesn't matter whether I agree or not. This is the culture of this kleros, and I am submitting myself to it. And then I learn to express the part that I am given within that order, right? One of the difficult things, and Jonathan Peugeot is helping me understand this, right, is the relationship between creativity and order and chaos, right? And you can't create without some sort of order. It needs to be there. Okay, now we can disagree about how rigid that should be. And one of the things that we're talking about in seminary this semester is how much creativity, as it were, artistic creativity, how much expressiveness is allowed in iconography, in architecture, in music. How much is allowed? How far can you go and it not be useful? How rigid can you be and it not be useful? Because we serve a certain moment in a certain place, right? So it's an interesting conversation. And as with all discernment, I would argue that if you drowned out the people who disagree with you, like I have traditional tastes, right? If I drowned out the voices that saying, you know what, it's okay to use brighter colors, and here's why. If I just dismiss them as innovationists and so on, I can go to my sources and I can point out why they're wrong and I'm right. That's not the way harmony goes. Let me hear you, right? And together we can come to something that is greater. All right. Doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean that some kind of compromise is necessary. There's something in between that's right. No, that's not it at all. But I go into it recognizing that I don't have everything required for the need of the moment, that the liturgy is best done with a group of people, everyone with their contribution. Okay. So this harmonizing, this submission, they work together. And in music, we offer our best. We do the best that the moment allows and expects and requires. And when we do this, we are participating in beauty. And let me tell you, there's nothing, like I said, this is when I experience theology. When I hear this done well, and also when I participate in it being done well. It's transformative. At the very least, it reminds me that there is there's more than the horizontal going on. That what we are doing also has a very strong vertical axis. That, however you want to put it, that God descends to be among us, that we are lifted up towards him. There's something that's going on. And being in beauty is very much a part of that experience, right? And the Lord gave us music to allow this to happen. Okay, so this is just some of the sides. So a musician learns how to listen to other people. What's being accomplished. They learn to match, then harmonize. They submit to the order of the music. And then within that, they offer up the very best and they participate in the very best, right? So we get this beauty, we get this harmonious unity, this unifying harmony, right? And we get this, perfection in the moment. It's liturgical, it's transformative. Now, you could say, yeah, Father Anthony, I know a lot of musicians, and they do that part well, but they've got zero social skills. Yeah, I get it. Some people don't connect dots, right? They don't make the effort in social relationships that they do in music. And I know some people that are good at music that are lazy when it comes to, that are good at social relationships but are lazy when it comes to music, right? I get that. I see it all the time. In ordained priests, it's often the case that some are just natural pastors. They're natural with that ability to listen and to lift up and to offer their voice in a way that harmonizes with and lifts up the other so that something more beautiful, something transformative occurs. Right? You've seen that. Hopefully you've had relations with people, if not pastors, that are like that. I have. Glory to God. But then they go to liturgize, and you don't have that same subtlety, that same performance. And by performance, I just mean how it's done, not in any kind of superficial way. Right? So you don't have that same quality of performance. And the other way as well. You see some people, when they liturgize, the way that they match pitch, the way that they harmonize, their attentiveness to the moment, it's obvious that they are completely plugged in, that all their radars are up, and they are performing on so many levels. But then you see how they relate to parishioners, or you see how they act on Facebook or something. You're like, wait, what happened here? Why aren't those same skills being put to use in that moment as were put in the other way? Okay. All right. That's fine. It's everyone has their struggles. And people who know me, they know where my struggles are. They're going to be like, Father Anthony, this and this, right? Okay, yeah, pray for me. Help me work out. Help me listen. Help me understand. Now I'm going to go a little bit deeper, I think, and talk about the harmony of the spheres. Everything was made through the Logos for a specific purpose. And this is one of the profundities of Father Stephen DeYoung's meditation on the prologue in St. John. It was his meditation on Christ offering the light. Right? In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Right? What he was pointing out is the telos of this, the liturgy of creation is made for the perfection of mankind and the participation of mankind in the perfection of creation, right? In Christ. From the beginning, this is how it was meant to be. So when we are a royal priesthood, that's what's going on. Music is part of that. So music, because it was made through the Logos, it has an order to it. It has a logic to it. But not just a logic that, structures it. It's also a logic that if we participate well in it, it is transformative. Through participation in this part of creation, we become better. We participate in the telos of beautifying. And I great credit to my high school band director for teaching us this. He was very good. He had been a music professor, band director at LSU, and he came to our high school. We had a very good program. And he taught us about the overtone series, right? The overtone series is, I think of it as the stamp of the Logos on every sound. So every sound, it's not just a certain frequency, right? A certain frequency that hits our ear apparatus and translate into a tone, right? There's more going on with real sound, because real sound it vibrates not just at this base level, but it has sympathetic vibrations at higher levels, and those higher levels are very specific. So in music, we can have a triad, let's say, and a major triad, 1, 3, 5. I could try to sing, but it's too early, right? And then when you put those together, you have a certain kind of chord that is pleasing to the ear. Well, how about this? One of the reasons it's pleasing to the ear is because it's built into sound. Every single sound that's made has built into it, even though it's a single object making that sound, it has built into it harmony. We are not saved alone. We do not live alone. Sound does not exist. It's so powerful, right? Because it works at so many levels. And then knowing this about the structure of sound, we can play with it, right? And when we play with it, we are dancing. We are singing within this telos, this order. We are dancing in the Logos. We are participating with him. It's very graceful, if you will. So the overtone series, it goes up an octave, I think another octave, then a fifth, and a fourth, a third. Right? And that's awesome. The stamp of the Logos on every sound. If you want just a pure sound, if you want just a pure frequency by itself, you have to create it artificially. You have to create a machine to do that. And it sounds very strange, right? And if you have one of these machines, we had one in our band room, and it had a bunch of tubes inside of it, and it would take the sound and it would show which frequencies were resonating. And they would the one for that would light up, and it would move to show if it was flat there or a little sharp there. And when someone would play, there'd be more than one that lit up. There'd be one, like if the person was playing an F, the F would light up and it would show if it was a little bit sharp or a little bit flat. But along with that F, there would be other ones that would light up just a little bit softer. And it didn't show this, but those ones that were a little bit softer, they were above. You know, in the same way that a soprano is above a bass, right? So it was above there. But it was that chord structure that's built into sound being shown in this visual rather than auditory form. One of the things that great architects have done in time is they've taken these patterns, and Pythagoras, he was all over this. That's why he said harmony of the spheres, right? They take this natural harmony, this pattern found in sound, and they would use it in the spatial relations of architecture, right? And this is one of the things that gave rise to some of our best architecture. Okay, great. Fantastic. So it's built in. So here's some theological things. So if there's the big theology of, hey, guess what? You know, you can see the glory of God in everything. The structure of sound is built so that we can participate in God's grace, in harmony, all these other things. And when we do it well, it makes us more perfect because it helps us learn to listen, how to match, how to harmonize. It allows for us to have a relationship together that's beautiful called harmony, where we don't all have to be exactly the same in order for us to work together to God's glory. These are huge theological points. It's also a good reminder that we're never really alone. There's no such thing as a single sound alone, right? Not only are we built for harmony, the harmony is always there. There's nowhere I can go and you are not there, Lord, right? The harmony is always there. And it allows us to bring out the best in each other. It allows us to have the best part of ourselves to be brought forward in relationship with others. Because even though when I sing alone, and the reason my voice sounds different than your voice is because of the overtone series. And that bird that's singing, the reason why it sounds so annoying is because it's overtone series. Right? Some overtone series, you know, they resonate on the different overtones that are more melodic, and some of them that are more shrill. I remember once Dr. Swore, that was his name, Bill Swore, our high school music director, and something was bothering him from the clarinet section. And it wasn't that someone was goofing off. That was the low brass section. That was us. No, what was bothering him in the clarinet section, something sounded a little bit sharp, right? And he went through, and they were all tuned correctly. Their instruments were tuned correctly, right? So they were all, their F was an F. But one of the players, the reed, the back screw on the reed wasn't tightened properly. It wasn't aligned properly with the mouthpiece. And so there was an overtone being generated that was sharp. And it was a little bit shrill, and I had no idea why. But because, you know, he was one of these ones that was past us, but he could bring that light back to us, right? And he says, okay, here's what it is. Go ahead and tighten that a little bit and adjust it over. And it fixed it, right? It fixed that sharpness. That was so cool. Where was I? So we're never really alone. Even though it's built in, so if I'm singing a note and it resonates on these different parts of sound, creating this kind of chord, that's brought out better when I am singing with someone else. Their notes, if I'm singing the tonic, as I often do, right, and they're singing on the third, then my tonic is going to resonate with their third, and their third is going to resonate with my tonic and in the overtones. And there's going to be a blending that takes place behind the scenes, beyond our notice. Yeah, and so how interesting, got a comment here, how interesting that all of these things that you're talking about flesh themselves out so differently in the West as compared to the East, particularly in church music. Yeah, and again, hedgehog and fox, right? People disagree on how comfortable they are with that, right? But this incarnational quality of it, at least some level, it's to be celebrated, right? Because it's the Logos being infleshed in culture, right? It's the pattern being expressed, offered up to God. Thine own of thine own is what we say in liturgy. Yeah, in different ways. How could they not be? Oh, it's so awesome. Man, it's so awesome. I love it. I love being part of this royal priesthood and part of a world that's made as liturgy. And I have preferences, even after serving for 2 years in an Antiochian parish, right? It hasn't really grown on me. I still have a preference, and I'm not saying that that's based on any kind of, objective discernment. No, this is where taste comes in, and I can recognize the beauty, and I am able to enter into the joy of that, right? But if I'm like, well, if I get to decide if it's going to be the Church of Doug, then this is how we're going to do it, right? Anyways, yeah, great point. But here, there's more. There's more. Because it's not just that music itself is graceful, because it gives us a way of dancing within, the pattern of the Lord. I don't know how to put it. I don't have the words for it. But it allows us to do this thing, that to participate in the will of God through the pattern that He has established. It's so deeply theological, and it's so deeply true. There are more levels to it. So the world is liturgical. Liturgy is the center of this. So let's go a little deeper. Music is logical, rational. Music is theological. Music is symbolic of the Logos. It's prophetic of His nature, of who the Logos is to us, right? So it's prophetic, right? It's prophetic about His purpose. It's also prophetic about His Trinitarian context, right? The fact that the harmony is built in, and this is more of a Western meditation, right? So that there's the fact that there is Trinity makes relationship possible for all of us. It makes it natural, right? Music allows harmony to be possible. It makes it natural. So relationship, music, they're graceful because of God. Thanks to Christ, because of God. 3 in 1. Okay? Now, when we go to worship, we've got this music going on. And remember, in Orthodox worship, there's very little that is just spoken. In my tradition, the Ukrainian Orthodox tradition, everything is sung except the homily, right? We don't sing the homily. We don't chant the homily. But everything else, even the gospel, is chanted. Okay? So it's very musical. We've got this music happening, and now we know some of the reasons why, because it's so profoundly theological. But then what else is going on? People notice that we're singing all the time, but the main thing we're used to, especially in the West, what is it that we do? Well, we're working together with words, right? So these words are theological. The words that we are pronouncing, proclaiming, reading, they describe the Logos. They celebrate his salvific presence among us. They celebrate the Trinity. They celebrate these theological things, right? And this is the way most people are familiar with theology, so I'm not going to go into great detail about it. There are words, and the words are profound, right? Because they are patterned according to the poetry and according to the philosophical logic of theology, of this profound, deeper reality. And so we're proclaiming it, and we're participating in it by our pronunciation of it. Okay? That by itself is it's divinizing. Participating in these prophetic, I would say perfect words, in the case of the Divine Liturgy. So when we say them, we are being made more holy by doing it. Right? We are participating in something holy. Not just because it's changing the way we think and giving us the words to help us understand God, but because, as with music, I am matching my words, my speech, with other people to the glory of God, glorifying God according to the pattern that he has established. Okay? Now, what happens when you join these two incredibly powerful, true, and transformative technologies, if you will, or so the music, okay, and then you've got the words, and then you match them together in a beautiful way, right? This blending itself, it's integrals above. So if you're taking calculus, you just took it to 2 or 3 levels higher, right? And then when you get the combination of the music and this perfect way of doing sound, along with this perfect way of doing words, and you put them together, and then you do it with other people who are doing the same thing, and not just doing it together. Yeah, we're all together, one body. No, wait, there's more. You're listening to each other. You're offering. You're building up. You're doing relationship. You're doing theology at all of these levels, and all these levels are operating together to the glory of God and to the service of your neighbor. The great commandments, it's all wrapped up. And in liturgy, it's being done perfectly. Okay? And then God's grace comes in. Right? And God's grace comes in. And we're not doing calculus anymore. You've just moved into the infinite. The experience is just, that's what's going on in liturgy. That's what we're doing, and that's why we need to do it so often. Because at all these levels, it is true and transformative. And then we're to take that and to order the liturgy turn all of creation into this liturgy, where everything, all these different levels, all these different voices, all these different technologies are graceful. They build up others, and they're offered to the glory of God. I can do that with all my heart, with all my mind, with all my strength. And so can you. All right, so there you go. The harmony of God. This harmony of the spheres, if you will. The salvific beauty of liturgy and music. All right. It was good to spend Saturday morning with you. I've got to go write some papers about things that I care much less about. It's good spending this morning with you. And until next time, Godspeed.